East Tennessee, wrote an author shortly after the end of the Civil War, had long been considered the Switzerland of America. Its towering mountains locking up deep, rich, and verdant alleys and coves, its succession of ridges and valleys, its magnificent forests, its roaring streams, the general fertility of the soil, the glory of the climate, the salubrity of the atmosphere, the sublimity, beauty, and picturesqueness of the scenery, the fresh and voluptuous abundance of the county, all conspire to make it one of the most desirable spots in America. The two regions had more in common than just natural beauty. East Tennessee was fiercely independent and often contrarian in its political currents, especially during the Civil War. When Middle and West Tennessee citizens voted on June 8, 1861, to join the Confederacy, most East Tennessee citizens rejected the call. It would remain a thorn in the eyes of the Confederate Republic and an enticing and romantic rallying cry for the Union, even though its complex views on race and the government would vex both contemporaries and historians for decades to come. At the center of the Tennessee state flag sits 3 stars representing the 3 geographic sections of the state: East, Middle, and West. The division is more than just a cartographic feature. Each region has its own economic foundation, social makeup, political traditions, and culture rooted deeply in the state's history. The state of Tennessee was born in 1796. So too was the rivalry between East and Middle and later West Tennessee. East Tennesseans quickly grew frustrated as economic and political power shifted to the Nashville area. The promise of a river-borne empire based in Knoxville proved fleeting as the sucks and shoals downstream along the Tennessee River, which flows through Knoxville and eventually reaches the Ohio River, prevented boats from reaching the Mississippi River for most of the year. Knoxville, it became clear, would never be an American commercial and industrial powerhouse like Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, or St. Louis, though it soon became clear that Nashville, located on the more navigable Cumberland River, might one day be. Finally, in the early 1850s, after decades of frustration, population loss, and threats to create a separate state of East Tennessee, the region received state support for a new railroad connecting Knoxville to Virginia and Georgia, boosting its small but growing commercial class. Few East Tennesseans, however, lived close enough to the railroad to capitalize on the growing market connections to the rest of the South. For the most part, the region remained defined by small farmers and communities, with few connections to or sympathy with the slaveholding economy of the coastal and lower South. Meanwhile, the new cotton-based Mississippi River city of Memphis had begun to siphon what little political power East Tennessee still possessed. By 1860, Middle and West Tennessee were the dominant regions in state affairs, with cotton planters and traders around Memphis allying with slave-owning cereal producers around Nashville. A robust trade in goods to the cotton belt of Alabama and Mississippi, and the slaves traded on the Memphis levee by future Confederates like Nathan Bedford Forrest, cemented Middle and West Tennessee to the destiny of the lower South. Pulled in various directions, Tennessee faced the Civil War with fear and uncertainty. The state's moment of decision came on June 8, 1861, when citizens across the volunteer state cast their ballots in a referendum on separation from the federal government. The Middle and West Tennessee counties voted overwhelmingly to join the new Confederacy. Support for secession was almost unanimous among the white population along the Alabama border. Franklin County, today the home of the University of the South at Sewanee, even voted to secede from Tennessee and join the state of Alabama during the impatient months before Tennessee's own secession vote. Some voters in East Tennessee supported secession too, especially those living in railroad towns like Bristol, Knoxville, and Chattanooga. But most East Tennesseans represented those wealthier secessionists and despised the dominant plantation owners in the rest of the state. No politicians symbolized this spirit better than Senator Andrew Johnson, who refused to yield his seat in Congress after secession, and a vituperative Knoxville editor and later governor and senator named William Parson Barlow. Johnson, as defender of the class interests of the non-slave holding masses of East Tennessee, warned that it is not the freemen of the North that secessionists are feared most, but the free men of the South. In a letter to a former newspaper subscriber, the colorful Barlow wrote that secession was based in falsehood, fraud, and perjury, and affirmed, "I think it the most natural thing in the world for a nation to fight for its government against a vile rebellion which has never yet been able to allege an excuse." What explains East Tennessee's persistent unionism? The loss of political power to the rest of the state clearly grated on the region's frustrated citizens. But more important was the relative unimportance of slavery. To be sure, nearly all white East Tennesseans supported the institution of slavery in 1816. Parson Barlow famously defended the peculiar institution in an 1858 debate with a Connecticut abolitionist, while Andrew Johnson owned slaves at his Greenville home. But a deep heritage of anti-slavery activity in the region suggests, at the very least, ambivalence about the institution not present elsewhere in the South. In fact, before the abolitionist movement took hold in Massachusetts in the 1830s, local activists like Elihu Embree preached the end of slavery to mountain communities near the North Carolina border. The Tennessee Manumission Society boasted support for nearly all the East Tennessee's counties, making it one of the strongest abolitionist organizations in America before 1830. And Benjamin Lundy established one of the first great abolitionist newspapers in Greenville before he headed for Baltimore, where a young William Lloyd Garrison became one of his top disciples. Smoky and Cumberland Mountain counties like Sevier and Scott cast more than 95% of their vote for the Union. Scott County, in a perfect inversion of Franklin, even voted to separate from Tennessee following a visit to the county seat by Andrew Johnson. The county, renamed the Free and Independent State of Scott, would not request formal readmission to Tennessee until 1986. Once statewide secession was a fact, many East Tennesseans settled on a new strategy: throw off the yoke of planter hegemony, once and for all creating a new state of East Tennessee. Not everyone agreed, though, and the result was a vicious guerrilla war that tore families and communities apart, fueling local tensions for decades after the Civil War ended. The legacy of East Tennessee's unionism is remarkably strong. Lincoln Memorial University, named after the fallen president, was founded in Harrogate, Tennessee in 1897. And thanks in part to Parson Brownlow's violent expulsion of Confederate sympathizers after 1863, the region became a post-war Republican Party stronghold. Even at the height of the Solid South of the early 20th century, when voting Republican was considered practically a mortal sin in the rest of the South, East Tennessee refused to vote Democrat. Tennessee's 2nd Congressional District, based in Knox and Blount counties, has not elected a Democrat since 1852.